We're going to have a look at formal charges. Formal charges will help us make sense out of structures that don't necessarily at first glance look like they make sense. But in order to do that, we've got to talk about ownership of electrons. So you may want to write this down, that an atom owns all of its lone pairs and half of its bond pairs. So I'm going to draw a very simple molecule, HCl. Right, notice that for the bond, rather than drawing a solid line, I've drawn an X for the hydrogen's electron and a dark dot for chlorine's. I'm going to say that by this rule that I have on the screen, chlorine owns 7 electrons. They're the 7 that are shown there. 6 of them are lone pairs. 1 of them is involved in a bond. If I was going to look at hydrogen's ownership of electrons, I would say hydrogen owns 1. Now, what are formal charges used for? I would pause this video and write all of this down. Okay, we're going to be looking at how many valence electrons does an atom own as drawn, and then we're going to be looking at how many valence electrons should that atom own. So you've got to be able to draw Lewis structures, and I'm just going to use the steps that we're used to. So first we're going to look at NH4. NH4 1 positive, so the ammonium ion, should have 8 valence electrons. Draw a skeletal structure, assign the bonds. I notice I have no electrons remaining, so I can't add any lone pairs or anything like that. Every atom has a full shell. But I notice that nitrogen is doing something it shouldn't. Nitrogen is supposed to make 3 bonds, but it's making 4. So I'm going to look at its formal charges. I'm going to say nitrogen owns 4, half of each of the bonds, but it should own 5. So I notice that nitrogen is short 1 electron, which means it has a positive formal charge. So the positive charge on NH4 actually sits on the nitrogen atom. Let's look at BF4 1 negative. So BF4, boron has 3 valence electrons. Each of the fluorines have 7, and 1 for the charge is 32. Let's draw a skeletal structure. Okay, I used 8 electrons for the bonds. I have 24 electrons remaining. Step 3 of our Lewis structures would say lone pairs on terminal atoms. Well, I just used all 24 remaining valence electrons. Boron owns 4 valence electrons, 1 from each bond, but remember, boron is group 13. It should only own 3. Boron owns 1 additional electron. The formal charge that corresponds to the charge on the ion sits on the boron atom. Okay, so I'm going to put a little note here at the bottom of the screen. When do we use this? Basically, if there's multiple ways to draw a Lewis structure, what's generally accepted as the correct way would be the structure that has the fewest formal charges.